All right, welcome back to the EandE Podcast. Once again, we are a dose of insanity in a sane world. No, what?
The other way around.
Backwards.
You got that backwards. That's Eric.
Well, no, but see, we are the ones considered insane.
This is true.
And that's Brett, by the way.
The one considered insane. Yep.
Exactly. So,
but that's only because we see
I
clearly.
proudly admit it.
Right. That's only because we're the only two men who can see in a land of the blind, and we're telling what colors are.
Exactly.
Yep. Not the only two, but the metaphor is more epic if we're the only ones. All right, so we're gonna kick it off.
Yeah,
because
so
we had
in the
some
land
fun
of the
with
blind, the one-eyed man is king.
Mm-hmm.
In the land of the mangina, the one who actually has a dick is king.
Right, yeah, exactly. In the land of the ballless, the one bald man is king.
Not that we'd be one,
but we have
man.
two balls. Not between us.
Yeah,
like,
each.
Two balls each.
So we're going to start again by answering people's lame, pathetic questions and telling them what they should
About
be doing with their lives.
We were amused by trolling these websites for... Because typically the advice is predictably bad. Because it follows the paradigms of,
Here's some weird ones.
being soft and shitty.
This one is Dear Prudence instead of Ask Amy. We'll answer anyone's questions.
Right. Hit me with it.
Well, there's a couple of them. It says,
all right, well, I got one
of
for
them
you
is a woman advises a woman turned off by her date's fart.
I think that's the one I have.
Is that okay?
Right here. It says, question, too soon for farts. Dear Prudence, I've only been seeing this guy casually for about a month, and on our date last night, he let one rip, and it stunk up the whole car. He apologized, etc.
Oh, first mistake.
First mistake.
Yeah.
And I know he is lactose intolerant. Does this mean he doesn't like me? His farting in front of me is very disrespectful. And if you really care to impress a girl, you want to do this. Thoughts? Okay.
You know what that instantly reminded me of is I just watched the entire season of Wet Hot American Summer.
Yeah.
And that one part where Paul Rudd was like, I'm this guy who's farting in your face and trying to get you to smile.
Yeah,
or something like that.
Because once he walks up and he's like trying to
He's like, whip that.
Right in the first episode, he's like, looks at her and he's like, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And he's trying to do this like jerk hole game the whole time. And he walks up and he's like, that's for you.
And fans it in her face. Yeah, it's like, that's for you.
Yeah.
And then later,
says something.
I'm this guy trying to fart in your face to make you smile. Or I'm just the guy who farts in your face to try to make you smile or something. Yeah, so obviously these are the kind of mental just machinations that happen in a woman's brain at anything. Like, look at how much she's reading into one fucking errant fart in a car ride. Yeah. And she's like, does this mean he doesn't like me?
Yeah,
what the fuck? Shut the fuck up.
Yeah. If anything, he just doesn't care about your opinion.
He's not going to like you
about
if he
his
starts
farts.
talking. Yeah, exactly. One thing he did wrong was something to apologize for. He should have just laughed and hotboxed her, roll the windows up, and turn that.
Or you could say excuse me or whatever, but without being apologetic about it.
Yeah, what are you apologizing for?
Right.
It's like, whoops.
Like, excuse me.
Not like, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I'm lactose intolerant. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So what is even her question?
If he had just farted and stared in her eyes, she wouldn't be writing this in. He just would have. If he farted and said, "What are you going to do about it?"
Yeah, exactly.
That's right, and then drove on,
or blamed it on her,
or made something humorous.
That's what I always do.
Yeah,
like, ew, gross! Don't fart. I can't believe you just farted.
Right. Yeah. What a lady.
Yeah, exactly. You're so gross. Right. Then instead of writing this, she would have been banging him.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So there's nothing.
So let's hear and dissect the answer.
Oh, great.
So you have come to the wrong place for endorsement of your philosophy. Maybe this Prudence woman.
What's her philosophy?
That it was disrespectful, or that didn't like you. I am of the old school that he was showing you he was comfortable enough with you to let one rip,
or he just couldn't help it and it was an accident.
Yeah, exactly. It could have just been overload,
core
breach.
Like he thought it was going to be a silent one,
Yeah. Sure, you were trapped, but a moving vehicle with the windows down offers the greatest chance for sulfur dissipation. It's good he apologized. There I'll disagree.
Yeah.
Like I said, you could say excuse me without apologizing. You can follow decorum without being apologetic for the realities of biological life.
Right.
But it's too bad you didn't laugh hysterically and say, nice one. If you care to continue to see this guy, maybe on your next date you should give him a beautifully wrapped package of pills for lactose intolerance with a note that says, this made me think of you. Yeah. Yeah, only problem with that advice is you don't need to apologize.
Yeah.
Like I said, you can be polite and say, excuse me if you want to. Or, but make it humorous even, or just be like,
Yeah, if you're a formal type. The key is to not show that you're like
worried about their
whether this person deserves any, not just this person, but like no human being on the planet deserves fucking explanation for your actions unless you feel they need it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's what people.
Well, it's not even that. It's just like Like,
I mean, this is the attitude that people have. They have to go through life explaining themselves. Like there's nothing wrong with it. Except that attitude has become like internalized. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing wrong with doing it when you think that there's a reason to do it. But it's just like the reason people say sorry and say excuse me, just like it's part of their script. Like they're not thinking about it. They just say sorry. And it's like, why are you apologizing for something?
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
that's true. A lot of times it's not because it's
in your
sincere
attitude.
apology.
Right, it's not even a real apology anyway.
There's this fear of I breached some sort of protocol. I've gotta
and I have to do what I've been told I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
So she's an idiot. Anyway, so here's two different ones.
Let's
Either who wants to beg a millionaire? My husband's brother won the lottery but hasn't offered to help us out.
Okay.
Or my husband to be has a serious interest in UFOs.
Let's hear them both. Let's go down the list.
Let's do the.
We'll start with the millionaire. UFO sounds like a nice follow up. Probably the more humorous of the two.
My husband's brother. Oh, fucking ads! No, okay, I think I got it.
Technical issues?
My husband and his brother, who are close in age, were orphaned as toddlers. Who cares? They spent their childhood shunted among family members and spent some time in foster care. Who cares? They were sometimes neglected and abused, but thankfully they have grown up to have stable families. Okay. They're nearing retirement age. My husband lost his business due to the financial crisis and now works 2 jobs. Retirement is looking impossible. Several years ago, my brother-in-law won the lottery, netting $50 million. Damn! Nice. He has bought several multi-million-dollar vacation properties and is living the good life. He and my husband have a good relationship and speak often. What I don't understand is how he can stand to see his little brother so stressed and working so hard while he has more money than he could spend in a dozen lifetimes. Obviously,
I don't know about that. I could spend that.
Well, I mean, people have proven this. But the point is, he has enough for a dozen lifetimes.
Right.
Obviously, he's under no obligation, but he does not seem to realize how hard it is to see how he spends his money on travel and amusements. I think he should help his brother out. What do you think?
I think obviously
he's under
him.
Right. First of all, he's under no obligation of any kind. Second of all, he probably isn't paying attention. He probably doesn't know how hard the brother's working and everything.
Right. Yeah.
And it's up to the brother to figure out if he wants to ask him for a handout or not, but that's all. That's what it would be, is a handout.
Right. I mean, which is fine amongst.
There's nothing wrong with asking,
but you have to know what it is. Like you have to know I'm giving you this money and I'm not getting it back, kind of thing. Because that's the problem. In most of the cases is that
it's some kind of like quote unquote loan.
Quote unquote, yeah, exactly. It's like don't do that.
Well, that's advice for the other guys: either give it or don't do it at all.
Right. Yeah.
Loan money.
Give it if you can afford to give it, and you desire to give it as a helping hand.
And I would, I would, if I was the rich guy, I would do like trust, where it just does a payout instead of being like, here's $1 million. Be like, here's 30 grand a year or whatever forever, and then that way you don't have to worry about it. But either way,
you're giving it to them. Is what you have to accept.
And like again, it's no obligation.
But there's no obligation.
But I'm guessing that he doesn't know that he's like struggling or whatever.
Yeah, that's something people don't realize that. Well, it's funny. It goes both ways. I would say certain things about people, people think like nobody sees that about them, and it's so obvious. Like there's certain things about like people's character or different things that you could tell they think they're getting away with not being noticed as that. Like, ooh, I'm not jealous or I'm not, like petty. It's like, no, everybody sees that about you.
$50 million is pretty fucking crazy.
But there's other things that everybody thinks everybody sees this, but nobody does. Like nobody knows your financial situation. Nobody knows these kinds of things.
Yeah, if you just show up like hang out with them, you're not like, oh god, man. Working 2 jobs.
Or even if you are just like, you might just be doing the classic, we're going to bitch over beers,
Everyone bitches about their job, right?
Right, yeah.
Anyways, let's see what she says. Because the person said, not jealous, just sad. She said, sure, you're jealous, which is perfectly understandable. No fault of his own. Your hardworking husband was battered by fate. Now the two of you are facing working until you drop. Your brother-in-law, through no effort of his own, save the purchase of a quick pick, was smiled on by fate and now enjoys luxuriant leisure. Especially since the two brothers suffered from a start in life that would have crushed many. It's disturbing that the lottery winner hasn't been moved to share a small percentage of his good fortune so that his brother doesn't spend his last years scrambling to meet his basic needs. That you note they have a warm and close relationship make this omission even stranger. Sure, he has no obligation to help his brother out, but at this point I think it's appropriate to ask. When it comes to difficult in-law relations, I usually advise for the immediate family member to do the speaking. Yeah, that's what I said, like the brother, not the wife.
Yeah, exactly.
But in this case, it might soften potential awkwardness for everyone if the request came from you. I disagree with that. I think you tell him and if the husband doesn't
interested about it,
right? And if he's not interested in doing that, then the issue's over. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
don't go behind his back and ask for money from his brother. Maybe he.
I mean, unless he was in the hospital, couldn't pay his own bills. Then you could.
For all she knows, the brother could have been like, "Hey, let me know." And he's like, "No, I want to take care of my own business."
Right. Maybe it's a point of pride issue for her
for
husband.
Him. Right. Exactly.
Where it's like, no, I take care of my family. Which maybe that's his own issue. He
may say he finds this idea mortifying, which is true. Then if you do go to your brother-in-law saying this is an uncomfortable meeting, blah blah blah.
Yeah. See, I think it's different in the sense that there is no obligation for this person to help out his brother.
Yeah.
There is, however, there was in the old world, let's say, some long time ago, there was a lot more of this sense of the family taking care of each other kind of thing. The family had a fortune, and so it belonged. But at the same time, it was not inherently everybody's fortune automatically because you're born into it. Some of that is gone, and that's potentially regrettable. There's
some
of the old ideas of inheritance and taking care of your family when they're down. That's potentially regrettable, but it's not an obligation nonetheless.
Yeah.
You can't say. I'm just mentioning it because she said something about it's kind of despicable that this guy didn't do anything even though they came up in a hard life together. It's it'd be a very noble thing of him to do to help out and to notice immediately and help out immediately. But that's not his obligation to notice everything that's going on with you,
Yeah.
So you got to ask. And then you are within your rights to ask. You are not within your rights to demand it.
Right.
You are within your rights as a family member to say to your family, I need help, please help.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be embarrassed about asking. But you also shouldn't be jealous or envious if he says, sorry, man.
Right.
Now, I understand how that happens, because if you got somebody who could help you with literally almost no impact to their financial situation, and it would change your life, you're going to be like, well, what's hurting you so bad, you helping me, I understand how that would cause some, but you have to get over
this
that a little bit.
Terrible. It says, Prudy counsels a man disturbed by his wife's sexual encounters in college. I predict a lot of love the person they are now. Yeah, we'll go to that one next. But I predict a lot of love the person they are now in the past.
Yeah, okay. But this one is fraught with the baloney of
blue pill baloney.
Yeah, you need to love her for who she is, and not for all of the cocks that have been inside
her. Pillaged her over the years, ravaged her. She's now refusing to have sex with you, so you should be happy with that.
Yeah, exactly.
You're the one now that she's buffing.
That she's blue balling. Aren't you loved?
Oh, it's a video. The UFO one's a video.
Oh,
I don't want to watch that.
We probably would have legal issues of playing somebody else's video or audio on the thing.
Maybe. I just don't feel like trying to sit through it.
Yeah, it would be an awkward pain for the people listening as well, so.
I thought it didn't look like a video. Anyways, let's do the youthful discretion.
All right, so
I was gangbanged 40 times, but now I don't give blowjobs.
Right, yeah. See, those other guys were hot. That's the difference.
I want to settle down now, and it's this job. It's this guy needs to man up and wife up this.
Marry those
reformed slut. All right.
Well, fill that dead air, man.
I know. I'm trying to. We got dead air out there. We're losing them. My wife and I have been married for 20 years. Wow, and I had a good relationship for several years prior to marriage. She's smart, beautiful, and a good person. Our marriage is strong. However, he didn't find this out until 20 fucking years later.
Wow.
However, during a recent conversation about our respective college years, we did not meet until she was 25 and worked on her MBA. She volunteered that she had performed oral. Here I called it. No oral. Performed oral sex on 2 different guys at school. She said that both were handsome and real catches, like it was a badge of honor for her to do that. I knew about 2 other past lovers, but this has thrown me for a loop. Why would she volunteer this information? I'm having a difficult time not focusing on this, and it makes me see her in less than a wonderful way. Am I way off base and having trouble seeing a woman with the past? Yeah, that she never...
And now she's not worried about you leaving, so she can just chat you like you're one of her girlfriends.
Yeah, that aspect of it is probably troubling, too. Then there's the aspect of, look, why didn't she say anything for 20 years? And why is she saying it now, kind of thing?
On the one hand, I'm not sure how you broach that subject. I'm not sure if you need to broach that subject when you're getting in with somebody like who.
Only if it's specifically like if the dude asks. Like obviously, there's nothing that says you just have to blurt it out.
No, of course, but there is something wrong if.
But if you don't say it, then it's for a reason. And why would you?
Why were you hiding that? Yeah, like if asked.
then it's probably obviously there's the part that he doesn't like. That she just casually blew some dudes that she viewed as attractive.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mostly the way she said it was like, I casually blew two I didn't mention before because like God they were so hot, and you're like,
right.
Well, what am I over here? Like, you know, you're just standing right there. That's what's funny. What's funniest about this kind of stuff to me, I mean, I'll let you read on here in a second.
Yeah.
But this very much, it shows like the blindness in a lot of people's, you know, worldview stuff, because these are the exact kind of people who would say that kind of thing, who'd be mad about like impossible standards of female beauty. And be like, some guy's like, man, that chick is hot. And they're like, how could I, you know, what am I here, chopped liver?
Right.
Because I'm not a perfect 10. And meanwhile, they're doing the exact same thing. Like, oh, this one time in band camp, the guy was so hot.
The football or the quarterback or whatever.
Yeah, I just had to bone him right there. And he's like, it took me like 5 months of wooing you with flowers. And then you were like, fine, we'll date. You know,
exactly.
Like, and you think there's not impossible standards of male attractiveness as well. You know what I mean? Like...
Let's see what she says. So there you were reminiscing, and out of your wife's mouth came this screen's moving. Revelation about what she'd put in her mouth more than 2 decades ago. Now this news about an extremely limited wild period, according to Prudence, I guess, has you brooding about the character of someone you've loved for more than 20 years. You probably know that people like to have sex, young people, before they settle down, before they quote settle down, before it's up to the dude to totally ignore any of these indiscretions. Are particularly noted for their sexual explorations, but you can't wrap your mind around the information that a young woman would have a sexual encounter out of feelings of conquest. This shows a serious lack of imagination on your part.
Of course.
So you need to broaden your understanding of female sexuality.
Yes, but not to necessarily give it a pass that she says, you know, like, you need to broaden your understanding and understand that this stuff does happen, and then you decide if you're okay with that or not.
Right. Well, also, and what has been mentioned here is how she treats him too. It's like saying if she's just like not giving it up for him, then it's like blurting out all the other dudes that she used to give it up for.
Like imagine if the roles were
quite
reversed.
A bit worse
like,
than if she's just happened to mention something that happened before.
Imagine if the roles reversed and the guy was like married to a woman for 20 years and he's talking about, oh man, this one time I got this girl pregnant and gave her all this money, and then after 20 years like, oh, but we've never had kids and I don't buy her anything she wants. You know, they would be fucking infuriated. Like, what is your problem? You know,
exactly.
Right. Yeah.
But no, it's not weird for guys to be weirded out and unhappy about that.
Right. It's probably...
chastity is like a female trait that is attractive to men for a reason. For like either evolutionary, biological reasons.
Well, it's one of those reasons that as much as we don't like to say it these days because we were a lot more laissez-faire and we don't like the idea of like these restrictive moral systems from the past, they had some basis in reality. They weren't just a bunch of superstitious...
biology, too.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They weren't just... specifically biology, not social reality, physical biology. They weren't just made up by a bunch of superstitious whacks because they believed in sky totems and shit.
Right.
You know, like, it was... The sky totems was justifications for things that were too difficult to explain, but they could readily observe the realities, which is that if you have too promiscuous of a society, you just have a lot of social cohesion breaks down in the marriages and stuff like that. Now... I'm not necessarily the one to judge. You know, I really like to no, but it's just like one of those things where exactly if too many people just have to like said like everybody has a wild phase in college. Like okay, yeah, everybody does these days, but the majority of human history.
Well, first of all, that's irrelevant.
Right.
Like
it's irrelevant.
The fact that everyone's doing it doesn't mean anything.
Right. Yeah. Like that's the problem with a lot of people.
It's not an argument.
Yeah. People like to take things that are logically irrelevant to the thing. Like everybody does that in college. Well, like that's not the point. That doesn't make it right just because everybody does it in college. You know, everybody in Nazi Germany turned into Jews. You know, like everybody's doing it. But so it's not wrong per se, depending on your moral system.
This one sounds good
to do that, but it is totally natural for somebody, you know, like I said, imagine the roles reversed where, you know, it's totally natural for somebody to be a little bit kind of like weirded out by the fact that this person was much more
promiscuous than you thought.
Or, you know, like sexually adventurous with other people than with you.
Right.
Or that they were just in general more promiscuous than you thought.
Right.
Or, you know.
Or, yeah, there could be, who knows exactly why, because without knowing more about their current situation.
Right.
But this one says, Mom and Dad are watching. I gave my parents remote access to our baby monitor. Huge mistake. Yeah. So maybe they see him like banging and stuff.
Or they're always like, why aren't you checking on the kid? Exactly. You know, like, he's crying right now. It's like, yeah, I just put him in there. He has to learn to be alone for 5 minutes. And then he's like, but he's still crying. Why don't you go check on him?
Here it says, my husband and I moved to a city a few hours away from my family after we got married. Shortly before our first child was born, I bought an internet-enabled video camera to use as a baby monitor. Out of guilt that my parents don't live nearby, I allowed them to access the camera through their phone so they could see the grandchild regularly. This turned out to be a huge mistake. Anytime they see something on the camera that they don't approve of, they let me know.
Of course, yeah.
I was endlessly harassed for not putting socks on my son's feet while he was sleeping, for example. The camera has a feature allowing viewers to talk to us through the camera, so our parents randomly start talking to me or my son when we're in his room. If my son is throwing a tantrum, they will come on and say, stop. Yeah, it is creepy. Stop that crying. I've told them I don't appreciate the interjections and criticism, but it's not stopped. So fucking shut down the camera.
Thing. Yeah, like, I don't understand the problem.
These people are such pussies these days. Yeah. I don't understand that. Like, if you say, hey, I don't appreciate that, and people keep doing it, be like, you're done.
Yeah. Cut off.
Yeah, I'm not putting up with your shit anymore.
Like, move the camera to be on the toilet, like, bowls. You just watch them shitting all over it.
I don't appreciate it.
I don't know if you want.
My son is now 2 years old. I have another baby with another camera, and I want to end their monitoring us. The problem is that if I change the password, they will be offended, and it will cause World War III. So I don't understand this. Like, if someone's that fucking nasty and unable to be dealt with, then you
stop talking to them.
Cut them out of your life completely.
Yeah.
If they're that poisonous, you know what I mean? Tell them to fuck off.
No, like, what you need to do is you need to say, and probably get the husband as well, and say, like, look, this is our house. It's our authority. We do it the way we want.
Adults, and you're bothering us. Yeah, you're not the kid's parents, and you're bothering the shit out of us.
We're taking this camera out, or we're changing the password, or whatever you want to do. If you still want to use the camera, you just change the password. And then you're like, and if you don't like it, I don't care.
Yeah,
you know,
that's not my problem.
Now, I'm not doing this. You can add to that. I'm not doing this to sour our relationship.
But you were souring
I'm doing this to mend our relationship because you were souring it.
Right, and I've told you what needs to happen for this to be maintained, and you refuse to do it.
Right, yeah.
So obviously you're not interested in maintaining this.
Right, yeah. So
bye.
For me to be happy with you as involved in my child's life, this needs to stop. So I'm manually stopping it myself.
Right.
And if you want to get on board and still be involved, like, that's fine. Otherwise, if you want to raise a stink over it, I don't care. We don't need to see you anymore.
Says you say your parents will start World War III if you cut off their surveillance privileges, but although you've given them dear leader type access, unlike Kim Jong-un, they can't back up their threats with nuclear weapons. Your parents need to be reminded that when they raised you, there was no technology to monitor your every breath, fart, and twitch, and this lack of constant scrutiny was probably better for everyone. It would be satisfying the next time they start shouting admonitions to you to look straight in the camera, wave goodbye, and toss it in the potty.
Yeah.
But you can be polite enough to let them know this experiment has run too long, it's coming to an end, and the password is about to be changed. Then change it immediately. If this results in your parents having a tantrum because you're no longer connected through an electronic umbilical cord, you won't be able to hear them pounding the floor. If they threaten to boycott your family because their unlimited access is ended, then that's their choice to disappear completely from their grandchildren's lives. Yeah. Often when people have a child, they can hear the voices of their own parents in their heads, but this is supposed to be metaphorical. No one wants the actual voices of their parents issuing from a speaker. Yeah, I wouldn't have lasted one day with that shit. First time they came over and said something, I'm like, all right, that's over.
Right, yeah, like, I'm
click.
Connectivity issues.
No, I think I would have been like, nope, no, you're not telling me what to do in my own
Well, I mean, like, there's two, you have the option of being like, oh, connection, or being like, or just being like, what? Who said that?
Yeah.
What? The hell?
Like, oh, that's creepy.
That's
no,
creepy. Yeah, no.
Off. Yeah. You're not giving me commands in my
house
through the internet. Here's something
I
about
didn't know such a thing existed. That's
creepy.
Creeper.
Yeah, no, that is weird. My wife and I mean, obviously that was a retarded idea from the start.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably a good idea to have one for, like, let's say,
if your babysitter's there or something.
Babysitter's there and you want to watch them
while you're at dinner.
While you're at dinner or something like that.
You check in on it.
Check in, make sure that, they're not just, like, smoking up a storm and the baby's, like, wandering in the backyard by itself.
Full of shitty pants or
full
something.
Full of shitty pants, yeah, exactly.
Or pants full of shit, I guess is what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Well, not full of shitty pants.
Eating all these, just really bad brand names.
Eating all the shitty pants.
Yeah, but yeah, like, not a good idea to, does that count as child pornography? You put a webcam? Your daughter's a cam girl at age 2.
Here's something about Craigslist. My wife and I have been married for years. While things have not always been perfect, we've always managed to be a good team, seeing challenges through together. One such challenge is relocating frequently. Okay. Yeah, I don't know either. All I think is from that one Tom Cruise movie where it's like, are you an effective team?
Yeah. Oblivion
Anyways,
or whatever.
Oblivion,
Yeah. It was like the code word for like programming.
Yeah, they're like their hypnotism word.
Right.
One such challenge was relocating frequently, and a little over a year ago, I started using the strictly platonic section of Craigslist to try and meet couples looking for friends since we'd finally settled in one area. That led to my falling down a Craigslist rabbit hole where I would talk with women looking for sexual hookups, sometimes even arranging to meet, then canceling at the last second. I kept this hidden from my wife and, frankly, from myself. I found justifications for creating a fictional, less repressed, more attractive version of myself who could live out fantasies I was ashamed to admit I had. Then I forgot to log out of the dummy email account I used, and my wife found everything, including some less than flattering descriptions of my fictional self's fictional wife. I deleted the account, stopped all that type of interaction, and am in counseling for this maladaptive compulsion. Oh, whatever.
Counseling.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Look, okay, I get it. Like, if you want to go to counseling, go to counseling. I think it has good things.
It can. A lot of it's just totally misdirected.
Well, what
I
think is
most of it's just to get a scolding for being a dude.
What I don't like about counseling is what counseling is these days.
That's what I mean.
Like, I think
the idea of counseling and mentorship is obviously sound.
Exactly. The idea of talking to wiser people, smarter people,
or to someone who's separated and getting from
like an outside friend,
perspective.
You know, anything like that. Even one who's a professional counselor, like,
there's nothing wrong with that.
But like modern counseling tends to be like, aren't you ashamed of having a dick? You know, or like, you know,
it's just not good advice.
Or it's all like
from it's so totally warped mindset.
It's so scientifically driven that it's not real science either. It's like there's all these ideas about like
by what they think
is science, and it's not really addressing like the human heart and the human mentality. Now there is of course a lot about psychology that has proven to be accurate. Now I'm not saying all psychology is pseudoscience bullcrap, but I'm just saying there's a lot of it. Anyway, we're not going down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But so was that the end of that guy's?
Pretty much. He just said I've stopped. I've deleted all the stuff.
Okay, well,
I know it battered my wife's trust,
weird.
even though she intellectually... Yeah, so
not even that weird, unfortunately.
No, he shouldn't have done it, obviously.
Good advice.
It was like what's called an emotional affair, basically.
Right. Yeah, you got to imagine a different life that was a little more exciting.
Right.
And, of course, whether male or female, everybody likes the idea of having more people be attracted to you.
Right.
Like, having more people be attracted to you means you are more attractive.
And even if it's true, we don't know if it's true or not, but he's going to have a hard time convincing her that it wasn't ever going to be or ever was physical, you know what I mean? Or that he's never done anything else.
Right. I guess, like, the question for her would be, the advice to her, even though she's not the one asking, is that you have to decide
if this is a deal breaker
or not.
And if not, then you have to be actually willing to forgive and move on.
I've seen that
and not just browbeat them for years. It's perfectly within her rights if she says this is a deal breaker, I'm out.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do it, do it. If not, then you can't just use it as a weapon.
And then later on be like, that time
that
you
exactly.
did that.
Right.
Like, no, you forgave it. Like,
right. You have to either forgive it.
Now, you could still be on the lookout to make sure that pattern does not repeat.
Right.
But if you say,
and it's going to take a long time to prepare that
then you have to actually work through this.
And not just say, you're my fucking emotional slave now for 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to hold this over you.
Anytime anything happens, I'm just going to be like, well, I still don't know if I'm ready to trust you yet. Forever, you know what I mean?
Because that's how you live. What that means is that you're not really there for love, you're there for control.
Right.
You're there because you have a hook in this person, and you like the idea of having a hook in somebody that you can use against them.
Or you just are incapable of moving past it, in which case, either case, you probably should just...
It's not healthy for you.
Yeah,
you should have just left if you can't move past it.
Right.
I'm not saying if move past it will be easy or fast, but if you can never ever...
You have to at least be willing to, or else you should just break up now and not...
Right. But what I would say is, while considering those choices, you have to acknowledge the fact that a lot of people don't recognize that they do this all the time. Just because it's not concentrated in like a Craigslist thing that is one step removed from action.
Right.
People do stuff where they read romance novels and everything else,
fantasizing
about other lovers,
or like watch 50 Shades of Grey or whatever.
Right.
So
people fantasize about other lovers and being like so attractive that everybody wants to bang you all the time. Everybody wants to be so awesome that everybody wants to do them or be them. You know what I mean? Like, it's just part of the human animal that
guys are biologically
wired to seek out mates.
Yeah, and just as women are biologically adapted to seek out
the best
alpha. Yeah, exactly.
Mate, in genetics and provisioning. You know?
Right.
So like that's what I'm saying. You have to acknowledge that kind of.
But for him, there's nothing else he needs to do other than just, if he's honest, was this something that he wasn't ever planning on going physical, then or just be honest with himself about it. And
so I'm going to guess what happened. What he said is they went on together initially to try to find like couples events.
Well, like actual friends is what they were saying.
Exactly.
Hey, we just want
like
someone to hang out
friend
with.
Meetup
and they
things.
found some of the weird ones.
And then
was, like,
one of them was like, one of them probably talked to him like, how's, like my husband's never around. Like, do you want to come over?
Right, yeah.
And he was like, whoa, this feels kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like,
just the idea and just, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, dangerous ground, and he swam in it for a little
too long.
Dangerous waters, and he swam in it for a little too long.
Right.
But, everybody's done that is what I'm saying.
Stick with the porn and just...
Right, yeah. Most people just do it with purely fantasy characters,
right.
like I was saying earlier, 50 Shades of Grey and everything else,
right.
so there's less chance of... Which,
in its own way, is
more pathetic.
It's more pathetic, but there's less.
Right.
There's no appearance of there being like a breach of
threat.
trust. Like most guys who find their wife reading 50 Shades of Grey don't feel like their trust has been broken. They may feel like, wait,
but it's feeling the same need.
It's still feeling the exact same need. Yeah,
yeah, that's my point, and that's one of those things that human beings in general, we don't have a whole lot of cognizance about that within our society.
Right.
Like we have all these things that are
recognition about how
fulfilling
attraction
sexual
and
fantasies.
sexual desire really works.
Right, yeah, exactly. We have all these things about fulfilling sexual fantasies, but it's all okay because it's not real.
Right.
Which it is in the one sense because nobody's quite hurt yet, but at the same time you have to acknowledge what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like with anything else where it's sort of just like a drug. You know what I mean? And it can be. There's nothing wrong with taking like drugs of any form.
Taking a drink of alcohol,
and trying to separate yourself from the mundane realities of everyday life to some extent. But you can't get addicted to it, and you have to be able to tell what's real and what's fake,
and when it's hurting your family or your relationships,
when it's not, right?
When it's not,
Exactly. So I don't know what
that's funny. What is the advice this person
She just says, thanks for the insight, sort of, into how someone gets himself into an alternate sexual universe, even if yours consists of playing cat and mouse with women who are probably also fictionalized versions of themselves. It's good you always pulled out at the last second. Sure, meeting strangers on Craigslist for sex certainly can result in actually meeting them for sex, but it can also go very, very, even mortally bad. You still seem torn about taking responsibility for your actions. I think he just realizes that
he just doesn't want to get blamed forever for it.
Well, not only that, but I think he really probably does at least believe that he just never was going to do anything. It's just like, God damn it, this is literally no different than like looking at porn or something. It's just more of like a live, interaction.
It was
like
a
webcam thing, where it's like a real person interacting,
pre-recorded,
thing. So he's probably just.
But of course, he can never prove.
Well, that's like we're saying. Like the feelings, it doesn't feel like he doesn't feel like because he always still loved his wife. He's never thinking of cheating on her. So to him, it doesn't feel like he did anything. He just understands
anything worse than pornography,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, but then of course it's not viewed like that by his wife, so he's getting the third degree or something like that. Yeah, I'm assuming. So
she just said continue your therapy and start taking direct responsibility. See, the problem is the therapy is probably going to do the wrong thing. You know, it's not going to do what it's going to say like how all these impulses are bad and terrible and you know what I mean, you should just be happy with your shitty life or whatever. Right. Instead of saying like there's something wrong with these impulses, you just have to, as an adult, responsible human being, you just have to take responsibility for acting on them. Just like there's something wrong with getting angry when someone does something bad, but punching them in the face, you're going to have legal consequences.
Right, yeah, it's probably not the best impulse to follow up.
Well, it's just like we always talk about, these things need to be conscious. They shouldn't just be based on a script.
Yeah, we gotta understand that we're still, half animals.
And once you realize, well, that sort of goes back to what you're saying, where the people just don't deal with that because that's basically the truth that gets uncovered is that people are more animalistic, really, in the way their brain works, and people are willing to recognize. Yeah. But then, if he had been honest to himself about, or at least like actually said, "Why am I doing this?" Then you can find other ways to kind of get those emotions.
Yeah.
That don't involve.
I would say like. That's probably about the therapy stuff. Like the problem with a lot of therapy that I've seen, and I'm just going off from talking to people who've been to it, and seeing it depicted in shows, which is probably wrong. But of course, they're depicting it based on what. Well, I mean, you just see all the archetypal type messages that they use in therapy. I don't know the exact. But like just the techniques,
just the mindset, and just the whole frame of reference.
But also listening to some, I listen to some podcasts that are kind of like by therapists or different things, and about like sociological issues and personal issues, and so and a lot of the problems I have with because I find it fascinating, but also like a lot of it's kind of troubling because, like you said, you see whether it's through media and it's a fictionalized retelling, they're all sharing or through reality. they're all sharing certain messages about what is and is not good behavior or unhealthy behavior.
Right.
And sometimes it's wrong because it's based on these ideas
right.
that it's reinforcing the status quo somewhat. You know, and like
Yeah,
in some way
exactly.
it's good because it's asking you to look in and find the motivations underneath it. But then when you start to actually find the real motivation, it tries to steer you away from it because that's not the acceptable motivation.
Right, that's not the...
And it's not leading you to the behavior they want you to have.
That's not the paradigm that they currently want people to be thinking of.
Right. Yeah, so you got to be careful about that when you go to therapy. Even though I would say, like, I think there's value and there's not a whole lot in our society other than therapy. And that's the problem, I guess, is that most people throughout history
There
have never
needs
had
more
it,
like camaraderie and mentorship and less
Exactly.
like
And less
actual
like
quote
going to
unquote
see the doctor
therapy where they
therapist,
just like let you
where the head
talk,
shrink you.
give you some or scold you for doing something or give you some medicine or just let you talk and don't really do much of anything.
Right. It is good to find someone who can mentor you. I think that is
Right.
far too lacking
Yeah,
in our
exactly.
society. And it's just like there's no sense of like learning from
Other
someone who's a
people
little
who've
further
been
down
there.
the road.
Yeah, who've been there before and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because they're just going in there to basically get preached at by someone who has a belief system that they don't even agree with. It's like, what's the point of that? You know what I
Right,
mean?
yeah, exactly. And or doesn't have a belief system at all. They think that every
Right.
human action is something that can be reduced to like medical jargon, you know.
Right.
And it's like no, desires and emotions and things like emotions have their physical reality, but they also have their metaphysical realities as well. Like you're trying to fulfill the ancient urge to survive, and that's why
it's
there's
all
a
like
sex
the
drive,
hierarchy of needs and shit like that too.
Right, yeah. I mean, like, there's been a lot of good that's come from the science of psychology, but there's also a lot of its own cult that comes from it.
Yeah, because it's not as easy to just prove one idea, you know what I mean? So it's a lot of conjecture and stuff like that too.
Right. But it's...
And there's just a lot of ignoring
not
the
even
basic
conjecture.
realities.
Yeah, I think it's mostly... What gets me about it is it's not like... There's a lot of conjecture in all parts of life. You have to kind of guess and go with it sometimes on many things. I think.
But I mean, they're prescriptive with it, though. Is the problem.
Yeah.
They don't just say like, "This is my theory." They say, "Based on this theory, this is what you should do."
Right.
Kind of thing.
They've got this like sense that they've all got it figured out because they took
Right.
some classes in psychology, and that it's like I said, the human mind and or soul or consciousness or whatever you want to call it is probably not the same as diagnosing and treating a body. Like they handle it like that, you know what I mean?
Right.
But it's not quite the
Yeah, because
same.
no one really knows how kind of
consciousness
interaction there is.
We know there's some physical interactions when you think, but we don't know where consciousness actually comes from. We know like neurons fire and stuff like that.
Yeah, but you can't even prove that
But you can't even
consciousness
prove that
exists.
consciousness exists.
Yeah.
Like there is something beyond just electrical impulses going on here. At
So
least at this time, we
right,
don't have an understanding.
So then
of.
some people just go the whole like, oh, it's chemical imbalance, only deal with medical type shit. With obviously there's an impact there. Your consciousness, as whatever you want to understand that to be, is affected by your physical to some
By your
extent.
genes
But there's
and
also a
everything else.
vice versa too.
Right, yeah. We don't know how much is nature and how much is nurture.
And I think it's different for each person too.
Yeah.
Probably.
Oh, I think so. I think you can have genes that are very strong.
Some people are
in
going to be
certain
completely
fields that like override your ability to think about it.
And I don't think everyone's consciousness is equal. I don't think it's either like some beings have a soul and some don't. I think there's obviously like some people have a higher level of consciousness than others, and some are way more ruled by their
base
by
passions,
their physical, just by their physicality,
their physical instincts. Yeah,
and they have less of like a separate consciousness.
Yeah, have a hard time
They're
separating
just
themselves
more like
from
an
like
empty
their
meat
impulse.
suit, so to speak.
Right, yeah. You know what's funny? There was like that crazy. We were joking around one day talking about how like people were all more badass back in the day because there was literally less people.
Yeah, this is our
so there was
theory.
like less soul
is
that
that
you
people
spread
were
between
right.
them.
There's only a certain amount of soul energy.
So like ancient Chinese
So
martial
there
arts
was
had all
only
this chi
like they
because
had chi because there was only like 1 million people, so all the human life force was only spread out amongst 100 people. That's why they were like super strong and stuff.
Right, like Samson was carrying
Yeah,
down
exactly.
temples, and ancient Chinese
If you got,
masters
like, a
were like
huge dose.
piercing trees
But
with their fingers.
Right now, there's like like heating things up and
Right, yeah.
healing people. And
Now you got like a
spirit
couple
journeys.
trillion people, a couple billion,
not
close
trillion.
to a trillion. Yeah. Like
No,
one of these
we're
days.
nowhere near.
No,
A trillion is 1,000 billion.
I know, but
we're at
whatever.
7.
I mean, it's called hyperbole.
Yeah. Anyways, 7 billion. We're thousands of times more people than there were.
Yes.
But yeah, so there's way less soul energy.
Right, yeah.
Everyone has these weak,
chi,
tepid
the overall
souls.
chi has been
The
spread
glow's
out.
dim.
Right, exactly.
The life force is dim and all these weak souls.
And that's just a jokey, metaphorical way to kind of talk about what we mentioned last time. Like we literally are like half our grandfathers.
Yeah, at least that's physical too, but it could be because your soul energy is so much.
Right? Yeah, maybe testosterone is just the physical manifestation of your soul energy.
Right.
One aspect of it.
Well, they've done studies to like scientifically show that you can affect your hormone levels and different biological things just by your mood, your posture, and even the position that you're in. Like just by doing like power poses.
Like you pose like a masculine He-Man, you start to actually gain testosterone.
And they also found that like silverback gorillas, or it's not so much that the gorilla becomes a leader because it's a silverback, it's that when they're in the leadership position, then they start having these hormone changes that make them a silverback. So it's like a positive feedback loop. Right. And that happens in humans too.
Yeah.
So
they start growing to fill
the
role.
When you have the soul energy, it gives you better like power hormones, and then it gives you better soul energy, and then it keeps it positive.
Now that's something that was interesting. I remember somebody was talking about like I can't remember who I was reading, some blogger, and they were talking about like a movie they liked or something, or Civil War stuff or something. And one of their favorite movies is the movie Glory with Matthew Broderick, if I remember correctly.
It's like a Civil War movie.
Yeah, Civil War movie about a guy who gained fame for being a Union guy who led a black regiment. He was a white officer sent to train and lead the black volunteers, like basically slaves who had escaped or northern black men who wanted to fight in the war. And so he was trying to train them to be a fighting force and stand up for their prestige within the military or whatever kind of thing. Mm. But anyway, I guess he was just the movie's almost irrelevant to this thing. He was talking about how like just rewatching the movie and reading up on the actual history of this guy and other like leaders of his age. Like the guy was like 24 or something.
Yeah, no, ridiculous.
And it's like just how much you got thrown in the deep end in the back of the day and stuff like that.
Yeah, none of this fucking...
How much life experience you got pretty early just living a hard life. And it wasn't just in war. Like other time, even before that, he had like ran a farm on his own already, like or with his dad or something.
Right.
And I think that's probably some of it too, is that our system is just so... with school and everything
it's taken away personal sovereignty in so many ways that you're not even expected to be like your own human being.
You're just supposed to sit there and take lessons.
Be a passive receptor for like all the status
quo. So it's
no
wonder that half the generation, like, because this is one thing, keep going further afield of topic, but it's linking up. And that's, people like to complain about millennials a lot these days. It's been one of those memes that makes the rounds.
Yeah.
And I will agree, there's a lot that's stupid about the millennial generation,
of which I'm a part. Sadly.
But the problem is, I'm like on the early end, like maybe Gen X, maybe millennial, I don't know.
I think you're millennial still. I mean, we're definitely...
We're millennials, but I mean, like, we would have been like the first wave, so...
No, I think it's supposed to be anyone from like 81 or 80 or 81 to current, yeah.
Or something like that.
I can look it up.
It's like generation typically 20, 30 years spread, right? So...
I mean, there's always going to be some weird cutoff because it's not like it comes in literally in batches.
Yeah. But,
it's a person reaching young adulthood around the year 2000. So, yeah, I mean, that would be us.
Yeah, entering college, And...
Yeah, it said birth years from early 80s to early 2000s. So, that 20 years. So, we're definitely in. But you're right. We're near the beginning of the generation.
Right.
So, definitely someone who's born... 2000 is going to be slightly different than
right. There's a lot more change in those 10 years than in some other 20-year gaps.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Sociologically.
Right.
So anyway, but what pisses me off when people like start to spit on all the millennials, even though there's a whole lot of millennial shit that I hate too, like all the people on Tumblr and everything else, and we're just like, God, think for your fucking selves, people.
Right.
The one thing I hate is that they're not acknowledging that there's only two things that can make millennials what they are. How they were raised and how they were born.
Right.
And whose fucking fault is that? Both of them is the generation before them. Yeah. Either your genes are shit and this is the fruit that fell from your tree, or you raised them wrong. And so I think it's mostly that we've got a society that is...
Yeah, but to some extent you can't always just say
everyone has a certain amount of... Well, no, I'm saying, but you can't ignore it either.
No.
That's the thing. It's like everyone... automatically thinks about personal responsibility when they're blaming somebody else. They're like, well, everyone has a certain amount of personal responsibility for your own actions, regardless of the circumstances of your life.
Right.
Clearly. You certainly have a certain amount of your own volition, your own choices. Even if you were brainwashed by the people, you have a certain amount of responsibility to try to break that. It's difficult because you can only see what you've been taught sometimes, but that's there. And at the same time, though, it's also dumb to not acknowledge that, like, I guess it's just funny because you get like New York Times articles and everything, like the millennial generation is not getting jobs and all these other things, and it's like, well, they went to your schools and they went to your things and they got taught to be this, and it's not working out.
Well, it's just like with anything else. People pick one side of the equation.
They pick the side that lets them.
And I agree. It's there's a weak pussy generation for the most part.
Right.
But
I will at least
it doesn't
give the
mean
benefit
that
of the
every
doubt.
complaint or anything is completely bogus.
Right. I would just give the benefit of not even the benefit of the doubt, but I will also acknowledge that they were trained to be a weak, pushy generation.
Yeah.
Because everything in the school system, everything in the media is set up to
certainly
enforce
weren't done any favors.
Exactly.
If you're going to say, I want to purposely make someone a mincing little faggot, then that's certainly the correct blueprint.
Right, yeah. Now, where you can blame them, of course, is when you start to show them the truth and they refuse to accept it. To be like, no, I'm going to go back to my programming. Yeah. And then you can be like, well, I guess you're a mincing faggot. You know? But, I guess I just don't like the idea of not acknowledging that this has been...
What I see people, like you say, refusing to acknowledge all these factors, and then the millennials refusing to do something about it anyway. You know what I mean? Like, you all right, now you still have to go fucking do something about it.
But I guess I've recently seen more people complaining about millennials not doing anything about it than I have seen people acknowledging the factors that led to them becoming that.
Yeah.
And you have to acknowledge both.
Right.
It doesn't remove the fact that they need to, wake up and do something about, like, for example, we will jump on to Aaron Clary, reveal something. He's done many things like telling people about, like, you've got to use this degree to get out of it.
Right.
And they'd be like, no, man, I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's like, well, good luck with that.
Yeah,
for
100,000 photography degrees.
He told them the truth, and they didn't listen to him. You got to wash your hands of that guy, and that guy's a retard.
Exactly.
But at the same time, you do have to acknowledge, and I don't think he's one of the people that doesn't, but you do have to acknowledge that they were raised all kinds of stupid.
Yeah, I think
purpose.
I'm
not using him as an example of a guy who does this. I'm just saying, like, I'm using him as an example of you can point out that these people are, like, the millennial generation is not willing to see the truth a lot of the times, and also point out that, but they were, brainwashed. But it's just, like, it's just annoying to me because it's like you said, people will acknowledge the half of the equation that lets them get off the hook.
Yeah, or that bolsters their worldview.
Like, they want to write off this whole generation of all these millennials.
It's just like, you just see the same thing with the whole, like, everything that's going on with the police and, like, the Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. Like, people pick one side or the other. Instead of admitting, like, that there's some factors from each kind of worldview in
both
play
sides
here.
can be wrong and right at the same time, in different ways.
In different ways, in different situations, yeah.
Right.
And so it's either, you're either like, the cops are always right and never fuck up anything.
People just not being that intelligent think blame is a zero-sum game. You got to find out who is to blame.
Right.
And the problem is it can be
they
both
think there's
people.
Like a person instead of like what's the situation,
and
figuring out what it is, like just kind of like apolitically and then dealing with it,
or being able to acknowledge that both sides have done something wrong, and to make it right again, you're going to have to punish both.
Right, they're more worried about like being right than they are about solving the problem.
Right. Yeah.
Because when you're solving the problem, you have to find out all factors that are at play.
Right. And that means digging up, like, your shit, too. Like, if you're on one side saying, this is a problem, and then somebody comes in and goes, you're right, this is a problem. Let me investigate. And they start finding your shit, too. Then you're like, oh, no, it's all their problem.
Right.
Like,
and that's sort of what's happening on both sides. And just like with the police thing, with everything.
Yeah, it's just one of those more frustrating things, being one of the sane men in the insane world. You start to see that people just aren't willing to solve the problem because that would mean digging into their own shit, too.
Right.
Or they're not willing to see the whole issue because they don't want to accept some of the blame.
Cognitive dissonance.
Or just accept that
they're literally not seeing reality the way it really is.
Yeah. And I understand, like, not everybody can see everything at all times. Like, it's impossible.
Right.
But you have to just be willing to see and not make it a... like the stuff we said for so long about, like, immigration in here. Like, people automatically take it as you hate immigrants, you're a racist.
Instead of
literally like, no, I'm forecasting an impending problem.
Right.
Now, it might actually be a good thing for, like, a bunch of Hispanics in this country, and all of a sudden they'll be in Mexico North or something 50 years down the road, and they may find that awesome, that they've got a bigger,
but then you're still admitting that it's going to be a new...
something drastic will change at some point.
Right.
It always has throughout history, so it's like it's inevitable in certain senses to change in some way.
That's why it's even more bizarre to deny it.
Right. I mean, all you got to do is look, like, has Rome been here forever? No.
Right.
Like, why did it change?
Right.
Stuff we don't understand. Bullshit. We know why it changed.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
right there. Like, yeah.
See it happening.
We can see it happening, and you can tell when it's going to repeat. You know, like it's not that fucking complicated.
Well, that's what I think it was Mark Twain who said, those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it, and those who do study history are doomed to stand helplessly by while everyone else repeats it.
Yeah, exactly. the often, not as often quoted other half, but more important half of that quote.
Is
like
the ones
those
who
who
study
don't study history are doomed to repeat it. They always like to say that in history class.
Right.
They don't like to say the part where... And those
most
who
people don't study it, so then the ones who do are just suffer helplessly.
While everyone else repeats it.
Yeah, and you're like, no,
and you're carried along with the waves.
Yeah, exactly.
You're all in the same ship, but you don't have the rudder.
Doing the same fucking things over and over again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that'll close it up for today.
Yeah, we're about an hour.
We had some fun making fun of other people's advice.
And giving some great advice of our
I
own.
find it to be amusing fodder, so we can do that again.
We're doing it. So, alright, we will talk to you guys, or you'll hear from us, I guess. It's not more of a conversation.
But you can talk to us if you want. You can go to our web page, which is englishenglish.net. There's email, Twitter, everything on there. Comment on the YouTube. Comment on SoundCloud. If there's any topics you want us to cover. Tweeter-pated.
Yeah, tweeter-paid us.
Tweeter-paid us.
We want you to be tweeter-pated.
Right.
Alright, we'll talk to you guys later.
Adios.